Okay, we are live. Welcome to the weekly roundup for November 21st, 2024.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, that
yep,
was you.
got it. You got
Echo
it.
chamber.
Thank you. Well, it's that time of year where a lot of people are scrambling last minute to figure out what do I do for Black Friday? And uh, it's one of those things that I struggle with because we did this for a long time. We did like an annual sale, and I felt obligated to do it. And then there was just that light bulb moment. Maybe I had been listening to some of the YC things before when this finally happened, but it's like you don't have to do anything. And you should have a strategy if you do want to do something. Like, what is the outcome you're looking for? Do you need a big influx of cash? Do you want to boost your membership? Do you just, like there are different strategies, obviously, for these outcomes that you're looking for. But the something that just makes me want to pull my hair out every time I hear it on a coaching call is, oh, ooh, ideas.
What's your
Every
light
time
bulb?
I
Light
hear
bulb
a
moment.
light bulb moment, every time I hear this on a coaching call, I just want to pull my hair out. Well, it's, the students expect it. We did it last year. We need to do it again. And absolutely not.
The
There
worst
is
reason in the world to do something.
for everything. Anytime you do something that's just because we've always done it that way, there's always sort of a moment of like, really, do you need to? Like, so it's been a topic. And I think that there's some really great ideas that are floating around in the network. And again, you don't have to do anything. If you are like we shot ourselves in the foot many times with our annual pass, made tens of thousands of dollars in 2 days, and then there was nothing afterwards. Like that's not the strategy for long-term success in a yoga studio. So yeah, that's a big topic right now.
I agree, 100%. One thing I will say about annual passes, if you are going to do any time of the year, I've had clients that have run an annual for a very, very specific reason. They got hit with something. Client a couple of years ago got hit with unexpected back tax or something with taxes, and was like, so it was about $5,000. So she just did a very strategic. I said suggested was, why don't we put together the plan, and we priced it, and I said, just call people. And she goes, really? I said, yeah, just pick up the phone. And she messaged me later. She said, oh my God, Terry, in less than 2 hours, I had sold the five I needed. Right. So
Mhm.
that's a very strategic, targeted thing when you need like a little bump of cash. If you are going to do an annual, this is where people, like you said, to your point, Carol, where people get in the trouble. They bring in all this money and it's like, woohoo, let's go to Vegas, let's go to Atlantic City, let's buy that thing we've been wanting for the studio. Which is, as a business owner, if you want to do that 100%, you can. It's your. However, ideally what you should do, let's say, whatever you bring in, you're keeping in mind you have to service that for a year, and that's got to cover a year's worth of expenses for the studio, essentially. That so ideally what my coach made me do is I open another account and I put the annual sales into that account, and then every month I transferred 1/12 to even out the cash flow, right? Because you got to keep in mind that if you sell, typically your annuals are going to, I don't know if you found this, Carol, but typically my annuals that I sold almost always came from monthly members.
I mean,
People,
they're your, high use
high use, regular
individuals
people.
and regulars. And so, yeah, I,
And
at
so,
one point, yeah.
yeah, so if you sell 20 annuals, that means you now have 20 less monthly members. Which means that, let's just do the math, like easy math. If it's $100, that means you have $2,000 less a month in cash flow, unless you're doing the discipline of pulling that money in to replace it. So then if you do that, what is your plan to then replace those members that have switched to annual?
And a lot of times people, when they do the annual pass, they like deeply discount
Yeah,
it. So you're not even getting the 2000 back. You're
right.
probably at like 1600 or
Oh,
something like
yeah,
that if
100%.
you're amortizing that.
Right.
And so like, that's another strategy too. We've talked about this in the past is like you don't even really discount your annual. You're maybe having them pay for their membership price 12 months up front, but they get all these extra things and it's a super pass. And, so that's another strategy you can employ to, make it less of a hit on you. But yeah, you have to have some kind of idea of how am I going to get those 20 members, new 20 members.
Right.
And that's the other reason why you would limit the number that you sell. So you're not pulling people off of membership.
I had
Um,
a client that did a specific targeted and forgot to turn it off and sold way more than he had expected, and it has bit him in the ass ever
yeah,
since.
yeah.
So there's that. And then why would you? I love the one, oh, I hear this all the time. Well, we've all, like you said, well, they expect it. They expect to have that sale on a class card or something like that. And it's like, why?
you're
Why
you're getting
that?
into this perpetual cycle like, oh, I'm going to buy my 20 class card or my 50 class
Yeah.
card,
Oh,
super deep. I know,
yeah,
I know.
I know.
Ah. And so it becomes, it is a boon. It's a burst of cash for you and it feels really good, but long term, it's just not necessarily the best thing for the
Yeah.
business. So,
Yeah, long term, it doesn't really grow. It doesn't grow your membership. It doesn't grow your monthly recurring revenue, which we talk a lot about because that's what sustains the business.
mhm.
Again, if you're doing something super strategic, that's one thing. But if you're just like, here's the caveat. If you have a plan, a very strategic, this is why I'm doing this thing because of this goal, because I need this, and you can quantify it, go for it. But if it's just, well, everybody, it's as my father would say, if everybody goes and jumps off a cliff, are you going to jump off the cliff? Right? It's that whole thing. It's the lemmings, right? Just because everybody else is doing it. And oh my God, the big box stores, I started seeing Black Friday stuff, what, in October before Halloween. And
Yeah,
now
it's
I
become
I read an
long.
article that about Target. I didn't read it, I bookmarked it, saying that something about Black Friday and that sluggish, I don't know, probably because they started their Black Friday so early. And then
Yeah,
they're discounting stuff for a much longer period of time. So what's the point of that? And what is your value?
yeah. I think it's really important too. I've had clients that were like, I don't want to have any part of that. I don't want to be part of that culture of like sale, sale. So they go the exact opposite direction. Either they don't say anything,
Right?
and or they are like, we are promoting peace and relaxation
And
and come for
gratitude.
gratitude. Exactly. It's that time of year, obviously. So yeah, it's like come in and she called it like not, it was something like undo, something
Yeah,
that was like unwind, that kind of thing, instead of
yeah,
like getting all
wound up.
wrapped up in this cycle. Yeah.
I mean, and if you
So
feel you want to do something for, how about like Toys for Tots? Or how about, I did on Thanksgiving Day, and you could do this like the whole weekend if you want. What about taking donations for the local food pantry, the food bank?
that's what we're
Or
doing here in St. Louis.
yeah,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
an unhoused shelter or something like that, where you, let's say you take, if you live in a cold climate like Ohio or St. Louis, do like a coat drive,
Yeah.
something along those lines. And then that way it's like giving the gratitude, giving back to the community and not just discounting your yoga because everybody else is discounting it. I always did on Thanksgiving Day, we did, hi Josh, we're talking about the pros and cons of doing Black Friday sales. And so I did a free yoga class and eventually then I rolled it into a free hot Pilates class. It's just like either a cash donation or bring food for the local food bank. And it was amazing. And then by the end, we did it every year. And then I had one very, very generous client who whatever we brought in cash, he matched. And so the last year we did it, which would have been 2019. Yeah, 2019 would have been, because then it was that time that shall not be named, and I sold the studio. I took a check to the food bank for almost $5,000 and some food, and they were just like blown away. Right. So they'll just, instead of getting, as Carol said, caught up in that whole culture of consumerism, then maybe work towards doing something that pushes back and really shows gratitude. So we're talking, Josh, about not doing a Black Friday sale just because. And if you don't even have a plan at this point, why bother? What are your thoughts on that? And I know you have thoughts on that. You have thoughts on everything, dude.
Too many. That's
Too
I have
many
the
thoughts.
reverse problem. I have to sort the thoughts. Yeah. I've always wanted the Harry Potter sorting hat, but for thoughts.
Or
That would
thoughts.
be like, what are we doing today? Like Gryffindor. Okay. Thoughts. Pros, make money and get people excited about your business. Cons, make money and get people excited about your business. There's like a double-edged sword to sales in general. And Black Friday is like a good representation of that. That the risk, I think, for the uninitiated business owner out there, what I would say is you have to be aware that sales are something that in business are a little bit like a drug that you get a little too addicted to too quickly.
Yeah.
So Black Friday is one of these moments where you can suddenly make, I don't know, 10, 15, 25, 30. I think we've had a couple 30, 40,000 and higher like in one day sales things. That's cool. But who is it that's buying it?
Yeah.
And then you have this thought, oh, that's how I made a bunch of money. So like, I better do another one in January. I better do another one in March,
Yeah.
etc.
That's a good point. Are they new people that are buying it, or is the existing client, which, and we talked about before you jumped on, just sort of devalues everything?
Yeah, I personally, I'm shying away from the idea of devaluing things. I think that was really an issue in the past. What I'm seeing now is the speed of how people hold something in their mind has changed. So to devalue what you do is something to be risky, but I don't think it happens in a one-off scenario.
And what,
But if you get addicted to it and you're doing sales all the time, absolutely. Because then it's like you're training people on the behavior you want them to do, which is to buy things at a sale. But to your point, like who is buying it? It's okay to pull people off an auto pay to buy a larger pass or something. But if you don't have other things functioning in your business, so if you don't have a good inflow of people in general, and you're still struggling with basic conversions and et cetera, it's like you just have this one core group of people that is formulating your entire business, then a sale, even on Black Friday, can be risky because you disrupt that group and you get money today, but then like you need to budget that money for the next however
we talked
long,
about,
6 months,
we
12
talked
months,
about that.
whatever.
Yeah, we talked about
Yeah.
that. You have to be disciplined to set it aside and not go to Vegas or Atlantic City, or buy a Tesla or something like that. Instead, put in an account and just drip it in 1/12 every month for the whole year. So it
Yeah.
basically boils down to what we said. What's your strategy? What's your plan?
What's your goal?
What's your goal? What's your
Why, like,
goal?
why do anything?
Why doing it? And if you,
Yeah.
and we said that before you jumped on, if you can't answer that question, then why do it?
Yeah.
And that was what we're talking about when we got to like giving the whole giving back thing. So yeah, Black Friday, you know, have a goal. If you don't have a goal, do something else. Do something to give back.
I mean, or do both of those things. I mean, one detail you can consider, and it's less common that we do this with Black Friday stuff, but think about like it's like unlocking the golden egg. It's like the secret sale. It's like a behind the scenes thing. That's harder to do with Black Friday, but the elements of that you could consider would be being more targeted in your messaging.
Yeah.
So rather than just studio wide and email list wide being like, yo, we've got this sale, who is it? Like send messages only to the group of people who have practiced with you this year more than 10 times and do not currently have a pass. That group. It's like, it's kind of a win back campaign, but you're using Black Friday as the reason to target them. Because
Or
that group, you need to get them back in. And they're obviously someone who at least was very interested in your product. So why not lean into that? Or there's other subgroups you could
I could
target
say
with.
along those lines, you just gave me a thought. So you could look at who is burning through class cards that might be better, that would benefit from a membership, and maybe you give them like just a special thing to get them on a membership. Or if someone's burning through cards and you have like a mini, like a 4 or 5 auto renew, maybe you do a targeted thing to them to say, hey, did you know we have this? And if as a little to get you, give them maybe a little discount on their first time, the first pack that they buy. So I like that idea, being very strategic in that and trying to maybe move people from where they're at, upselling them to something, like either getting them back in or upselling them to something that's recurring. So
Yep.
that could be an interesting thought. And this kind of goes to pricing, which wanted to talk about is sort of segue into. I've been working with a new client. She just opened her studio a couple of months ago. And one of the things, and when we were working through her opening the studio, was we looked at her pricing. And she wanted to keep it really simple, wanted to do something. And I said, okay, are you open to trying something really new that's not done very much in yoga and that really could disrupt the market? And she said, yeah. So she launched with a weekly membership. It bills every 7 days. And she had she's a hot studio. So she called it her founding hot pass. So for the founding hot pass, she priced it at a founding rate. And she sold that up through, I think, last week when she had her official grand opening. And then she bumped it up. And she only bumped it up $6. So now her weekly membership is the exact same price as her drop-in. And I'm here to tell you that she is crushing it with this. She already has 88 weekly members. Her cash flow is super solid. I will tell you that for those of you listening that are, it's like she's already at not a little over halfway through, where I was going to say December, halfway through November with no Black Friday, because we also talked about that and walked, and she said, no, you're right. I'm not going to do anything. She's already at $15,000 and she's been open for less than 2 months. For the month, for first 20 days of the month, which is huge for a new studio and not in a huge market, right? She's
Yeah, if
not
you're not in a big market, that's
not in a
awesome.
major metro market. I mean, that's just like she's already covered her operating expenses every month. So it's just interesting that, and we talked about, I really feel it's that weekly membership that got her there so quickly. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Yeah. Carol, you go ahead first. The only comment I would make is yoga studios are an MRR business. And so take MRR out and call it WRR. Is that a thing? I don't know. We just invented it.
Yeah.
But
Recurring revenue. It's just RR.
It's a recurring revenue.
Recurring
It's a
revenue.
cash flow business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's great. I love that she had the pre-sale too. Was very strategic about that. And I mean, that's a great way to start. I think anyone would be happy with that kind of revenue coming in so quickly. So
And here's the thing, there's no intro. It's like, there's no like the first week is this price and then it rolls in. It's just like the price is the price. It's like, and the one little caveat, the little asterisk is her software currently does not allow self-cancellations. So that she says, there is a little bit of admin lift on that because obviously people are canceling. She says, however, it's worth it. And what she's been doing, because she has an auto renew 5-pack, when someone wants to cancel, she just suggest, they're like, oh, I only think I can come once a week. She said, great, I've got that. Like, oh, I'll buy that instead. So she's been converting a lot of the converting a lot of the weekly to just her auto 5. And that has been really effective. And I'm sure that it's Walla. I'm sure that Walla will very soon have that self-cancellation feature. So that'll make it super duper easy. So yeah. So do you want to disrupt your pricing and want to try something new in your market? And if you're the only one doing it, why not? Be the disrupt, right? You talked about that a while back, Josh, about, being a disruptor in your market, doing something different.
Yeah. First rule, first idea, a principle in marketing, right? Be different early and often.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is even the thought from a marketing perspective, there's the thought of like, or business marketing strategy perspective. It's like, if everyone's doing this, that's the reason to do this. Like, go the complete opposite direction. Yeah, that's an imperfect science. There's more detail to it to consider. But yeah, trying to do something that sticks out so that it's novel and therefore memorable, or like looked at in a different way, or recontextualizes things. That's a huge, huge advantage. And I think also what's coming to mind for me is the idea that like there's a video we posted just a couple of days back on this too. If you're building a board game and you're the maker of the game and you want to ensure that you always win the game, you would just make the rules that you always win. Like you would build the rules into the game that you can't lose. That's your business. You just build the rules so that you can't lose. And or you are the person who can change the rules and build how things function. Pricing are a good example, is a good element of that, because your price isn't why someone's going to come to your studio, or at least not the only reason. It's an element maybe, but it's the rules of engagement. Your pricing is, your pricing packages are how people opt into participating, and it's the gateway to them becoming a member and part of the community. So those are sort of more like the rules of engagement. So this is a good example of like, make the rules different. You don't have an intro. You don't want to be messing around with 10 different passes, whatever else. Just have one simple thing: weekly membership. There you go. Cancel anytime.
Yeah. And some people said, well, do you have an intro offer? She said, this is a great deal. That's a response when people call up about it. Well, do you have an intro? This is a great deal.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
What better deal do you want than this?
Yeah, this is a great deal. And they're like, oh, okay, sign me up, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the other route, just because we're on the conversation of opening a studio and pricing as you open, because pre-sale is something that, if done correctly, can be very powerful. The other route that we see less in the yoga world, but in boutique fitness happens a lot, is by charging more. It's you actually don't offer proper pricing packages out of the gate. An example of this would be F45. They come into a market and they, with a few of their places anyways, you like couldn't buy anything other than a drop-in in the beginning. So you're paying like $38 for a class. And then you're like, cool, I don't want to pay $38 every time for a class. But they're like, that's all we got. Just for like the first month, 6 weeks ish, during the moment that like you're the new kid on the block, everyone's coming to the place, whatever. Anyways, it's like during that small window of time, you've got to maximize every person on the floor. And then anyone who's come more than a couple times, that's the target audience that's, quote, willing to pay, because they've already basically overpaid for what's gone on. So I'm not suggesting that that's a better technique or one necessarily for a studio to do, but rather, again, people don't buy your pricing, but it's a rule of engagement. So you can do some things like this when especially when you're opening, to better position you in the market and very quickly be at a positive cash flow, in a positive cash flow situation. You should be in the black in your books in the first 3 months in a yoga studio. It's not the kind of business where it's like, oh, we're going to lose money for 5 years and then make money. That's from a cash flow perspective, that's not a thing for studio. Maybe to get out of some debt or something, but
Well, yeah,
You
if you
should
have a
be,
big, you should, I mean,
yeah, you're not going to pay off
yeah,
your debt right away, but
right.
cash flow, month to month cash flow,
Month to month,
right?
yeah.
Your debt, your lease payment, your all your expenses
For
and your
basic
debt
expenses.
payment, you should be covering that
Yeah.
plus your profit margin within the first 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, your debt payment. That's a good way to
Mhm.
put it, your debt payment. And I will say that if you do like the sound of what Josh said, I'm sure one of the things that makes F45 effective is that they have a very solid follow-up process to get those people onto some other package. So you have to have a dedicated staff, a sales team that's trained how to do the follow-up. Because that's the thing with any of these off things like that is if you don't have the team in place to do, it's, you know, it's not going to be successful. And we see that a lot
All the time.
all the time. Yeah.
In the yoga world, the excuse is people don't want to be sold.
Or I don't sell.
In the other, or I don't sell, I don't believe in selling. In the not yoga world, it that's there too, but it's not worded that way. It gets worded as like, well, they'll just go online and do it themselves, or people will buy it if they want it. Like it's like putting all the onus on the purchaser to make the decision, which it is their decision, but there's a misinterpretation to think that that's what's happening. Like people don't come to your studio and then go and peruse your website for 4 hours and think about it back. And like they're not having that conversation without you. All you're the prompt for the conversation. So I think having a sales team or a sales process, it doesn't have to be complex, nothing too
Well, it's
crazy.
KISS. Keep it simple, sweetheart.
Yeah, is the lowest hanging thing for most teams to significantly improve their cash flow. When we're talking about like getting to that profitability point right away, that's how you do that.
Yeah.
Sell someone something. Because all this talk of pricing backs up that conversation. Your pricing can be perfect technically and doesn't mean that you're going to succeed. Your pricing can be a little wonky. You have a good sales team in front of it, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm out.
All right, you're out. Go. Here's a good one. Okay, so this was posted in the YC earlier this week, and I'm just going to read the response from. I had said that it's about pick a spot, a reserve a spot, or where people can in advance say, I want this spot, just like you're choosing a ticket in a theater or something like that. And I had commented that I feel it's a great feature. I have a client that uses it that loves it. And I said it, I think it helps reduce anxiety for people. And she had said their teachers were pushing back. And I asked, I'm curious, tell me more about that. And so this was her response is, instructors state that the book a spot option goes against the philosophy of yoga, like embracing non-attachment and staying present. They feel that students already naturally find their favorite places, and when they have to adjust, is a chance for personal growth. One instructor had experience with this at another studio, and she stated that assigned spots have even led to misunderstandings and conflicts, which don't align with the inclusive and welcoming vibe we want to create. To which I would say, okay, and bullshit.
You think so?
I do.
Carol, I gotta hear your take on it.
When I heard assign spot versus pick a spot, like that, I think there might be two different things going on here.
Oh, that's
I
a good, yeah, because
so like if you're assigning people a place, like that's different, but pick a spot, like you said, all the studios that I've worked with that use it, the students love it. And it's really nice. It's a nice feature for, if you have a certain spot in the room that's you feel like is better for a first timer to be there and you see them on the schedule, you can kind of manipulate that a little bit and help them find a good position. Like we kind of reserve a spot at our studio without having specific spots. I don't know how to explain that. But anyway, yeah, we want them to be in the best place for the best experience. And I think that it could help with that. I don't know. We talked a little bit before we came on, where back in the day, you'd have that person that they're waiting at the door, like they want to be the first one in to get their spot. And then if somebody is in their spot when they get there, it's like that they're just have this whole, like they'll spiral about it. So it could help with that. And back in the day, sometimes we would be like, okay, Kathy, you're always in that spot. I'm making you move. Like we would sort of agitate them in a way to do that. I would never do that now. I would never do that. But, I think in that non-attachment, you're trying to like get them there and see how different it is to be in a different spot. I don't know, like where am I going with this? I kind of like the idea of having it. If it's available, I don't know. I don't know if it goes against any kind of, for me, I don't see how it really goes against the yogic philosophy.
So practicing non-attachment, you have to get to a point where you're ready to do that. And I think if someone's at that place where they don't really care where they practice in the room, then fine, that person doesn't have to pick their spot. But for people starting out, or for people, particularly nowadays, a lot of people are coming to yoga now or fitness now. Before the pandemic, it was get in shape, lose weight. And we know now it's about, reducing anxiety and stress. And so that's one less thing they have to stress about, is it's like, I know that I like this spot and I can pick it. The other thing from a client experience that I see is that it helps eases when classes are on your bigger, busier classes, because it's all mapped out and people know exactly where to put their mat, and you're not having to move people around. And the other, because obviously you have to mark the spots and number them somehow. And then I think the other thing is that for like, you could put it as a perk of membership. If they can book further out, it's like, hey, not only can you book for further out, but if you want, you can book your favorite spot first, so that the people who always want to be right next to the teacher in the back corner, whatever it is. I think it enhances not only the client experience, I think it can like I said, help with the operational experience in really busy classes when you're, particularly when you're going between. And I think maybe what the teacher was talking about is, if it was assigned versus pick a spot, there, yes, when you do something new like this, there is going to be a moment of transition until people get used to it. And maybe there might be some people that are upset that they show up and their spot's gone or whatever. But the studios that I know that are doing it, it's like once they get through it, it's like people love it. So, and I also believe also sort of that whole curse of knowledge, right? As a yoga teacher, we have a lot more knowledge and we're at a different level, beginner's mindset. So Josh, I'm sure you're going to say something profound to my bullshit.
I thought that response was really good. That's the kind of response I would want from my staff. That was a thought out response. There was a specific reasoning behind it. Those are really sound arguments, actually. I tend to agree with some of what they're saying. I'm with Carol. I remember, the studios, memory lane, the studios we came down, you weren't allowed to practice in the front of the room until you practice a certain number of classes and the teacher told you to. And then if you're like, I don't want to practice in front of the class, they're like, I don't give a shit. Practice right up front. You have to, because the new people need to go in the back and they need to see what the hell they're doing. And there was no question about that stuff. If someone had their same spot all the time, like Carol was saying, you would be like, cool. And today we're going to go over here.
Or I would sometimes do, okay, now.
Man, that would blow up in your face now, I think, in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah. I would say, okay, turn around and face the back wall.
Yeah.
So, like no mirror. Because the people want to be right up front. Yeah, I mean, I used to do it. The reason I say bullshit, I just think times have changed. They really have. And I think trying to force someone, and I agree with you, it is a thoughtful response, and I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just, I think the teachers are looking at from one position, it sounds like this person's only looking at from one perspective. And like we talk a lot about, is the teachers don't always have that 10,000-foot view of what's happening within the studio. So
yeah, I suppose though, it also comes down to what you're prioritizing. Like, what I like about this teacher's response, and where I think it's worth really looking at, is who are you as a business? Like, the thing that's been lost when we're talking about the nostalgia almost, right? We're all smiling a little bit about how kind of hardcore it used to be. Like, Butabi Joyce and his grandson in my store used to hit you with a stick, literally. What are you doing? Like, I'm not saying get a stick and hit people, but just there was this huge backlash because people misused this power, and then it became militant and whatever. But that was never the point. The point was yoga practice, asana practice is a discipline. And an enormous amount, if not more than the postures themselves, of the discipline is the discipline of the mind to like fucking hold still, breathe how you're supposed to, prescribe to the posture. When you're uncomfortable, don't run away from it. Don't fucking talk in the middle of class. No electronics to look at. That was part of the core benefit of why you even practiced at all in the first place. That to me, yes, the market has changed, but it's softened around those things. That's the part that's been lost. And I would debate that there are people that are dying for it, like really craving it, but it has to be presented in a very nuanced way now. And you have to give reason for it. And it has to be delivered empathetically, and you have to give people grace to figure out how to get into the discipline, et cetera, et cetera. That's the part that never happened very well. So my point would only be, this comes down to like, what is your brand? Like, who are you as a studio? Are you the studio that's like that? Because I think that there's actually a lot of value in that, but you have to go all the fucking way. Like every teacher has to be committed to it. You have to be prepared for those conversations. You have to lean into that all the way. Or are you the studio that's like, no, actually, we're prioritizing these other elements, such as first visitor comfort, and just like the major problem we're solving is just make people fucking get here and get onto their mat, sort of thing. And that's where more of the focus is. Not that those are necessarily against each other, but like, what is your brand and what's the feel and what are you going to push for? What I don't think works is what we've seen in the yoga world, where it's like, we're going to have these arbitrary guidelines and etiquettes and rules, and we're going to say no to things such as pick a spot, because that's going to create what we're talking about. That's going to create the brand and everything else. It's like, you've got to embody it all the way through. If pick a spot is against whatever there was on the list there, the inclusivity part or the whatever else, then, and we're trying to avoid the assigning spots and etc., then you would want to lean into that all the way and like actually promote practicing in a variety of spots and promote special spatial awareness within the room and promote, where a new person goes or whatever else. Or go the other way and be like, cool, this doesn't matter. Because here's the other thing about this is like, you could also take the play, this does not matter. It's just customer service. Pick the spot, just fucking get in the room and practice. I don't care.
If you approach it from that perspective, it's like I said earlier, if someone really it's like, it helps them get there and it reduces anxiety for them so that they can practice, fine, they get to pick their spot. If you don't care, you just show up. Okay, what spot? Okay, I'll take that one today. And then to your point, Josh, again, talking about that being open-minded and non-attachment, that can still, I think, play as well into the whole narrative. But you're always going to have those people, to Carol's point, that are out the front door wanting to get their spot because they need that for their mental health. And so you could do it both ways. It could work both ways, I think. With the pick a spot, it's like, if you don't want to pick a spot, you don't have to pick a spot.
That's a great point though, Terry. Here's the thing though. Is it our job to bend the will of the business to like appease somebody's mental health and their OCD around having the specific spot?
No, not necessarily, but there are a lot more of them out there nowadays than there were 10 years ago. Or, because
Hey, controversial take, is that because we're empowering it? I'm saying it as a question. I'm not saying it as a belief.
But I'm also going to say too,
because we're like, you know what? You should pick your spot. You should pick your spot because, Terry, you're not comfortable practicing on the left side of the room. You get to have the right side of the room. Make sure you pick your spot.
Just for clarification,
I know you will, Terry. I'm using you as the example.
I know. However, the other thing you're talking about with the focus and discipline, all that stuff, you got to realize too, even a decade ago, we're coming up through the OG Bikram world, and that was the jam for Bikram And
No, hey, no way. I'm fighting this one. I'm
but like a
sorry. That was
vinyasa.
not the Bikram world. Everyone shits on the
Absolutely.
Bikram world.
It
Everyone
was,
shits on this being a Bikram. Yes, it was the Bikram world, but it
but it was
wasn't
also
Bikram yoga.
Mysore. But there were other disciplines. But
It was Ashtanga. Original, if you go back and take
a
any original
standard
power flow
vinyasa
class
studio,
stuff
no way.
back in the day, absolutely. Circa 2005, absolutely. Half of them, it was super hardcore like this. I think that Iyengar, if you ever go to a hardcore old
Oh
school
yeah, no,
Iyengar
I did.
studio, I
Yes.
mean, they're literally strapping you against the wall and they're like, hold on, you know,
Yeah. No.
it just, no way. This was absolutely a Bikram thing. I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm saying it was all of the major yoga lineages that arrived in the West had a moment where this was a core focus, was the discipline of the practice. And that's what got softened in the West. I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying as an observation, that's what I've seen is like it's gone so extreme the other way that there's actually like a gap to add that back in as a value point if that's your vibe, if that's your style for your studio. So the pick a spot thing, I don't know. I think pick a spot's great. I also see why you would say no. I think that this comes down to like, who are you as a brand? That's the question.
Let me ask you this, Josh. And if you had a studio today, would and your software offered pick a spot, would you have that as an offering? Same to you, Carol. I mean, MindBody does have it. Walla now has it. I don't know who else has it. Mariana Tech has it.
Mariana Tech has it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the number one feature why people would go to Mariana Tech,
Yeah.
but you don't it's just as good in the other places now. I don't know.
No, no. Well, that's
I
fair.
actually don't know because it really depends. If I was going to open a studio today, that question is too simple. I need more details. Where am I opening the studio? What's the size of the market? What I know that sounds funny, but like I know too much. If I was opening a studio here in Sayulita,
No.
I would purposefully max it out at 8 people and I would lean very heavily into the discipline part of it because there's nothing anywhere near that here. And I would not have pick a spot. If I'm opening up in LA, yeah, maybe. And because also my products would be different. I would have pick a spot because I would want more control over the supply and demand. I would be running uh I would be running like a traditional original hot yoga styled class, something that's like hatha and really hot, more static postures. I'd be running a dynamic class, something that's more vinyasa based. I'd definitely be running like a yin or a nidra. That would be the combo. And I would change how many people could be in each one of those classes. They wouldn't have the same capacity. So I would want pick a spot. I also the layout of the room I would change. It makes perfect sense in a 26-2 class to all face forward. In a vinyasa class, you can do a moon shape. In a yin class, and have everyone face the center.
Well, interesting when I go back, fall back, try to fall down backwards back was I took from he had it's called Studio 108. It was very small. I think it was max was 8 or 10. And it was Ashtanga. And was the mats faced in, and then the instructor was like going up and down the middle. So we faced each other. There was one row, because it's a tiny studio, and two rows, and with one, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We faced each other.
Well, there are no mirrors originally.
Yeah, no mirrors. Yeah. So
that comes out of the dance world. That like Bikram would popularized putting mirrors into studios as a teaching tool.
yeah. So anyway, all right. Well,
That's what I was gonna say. Jiva Mukti, same thing. Baptiste is hardcore,
yeah.
like good hardcore.
Well, again, that goes to what kind of studio are you? Because if you're that way, then you're appealing to a certain type of client for sure. Right. And it goes to Carol, one of your clients that we did an on-site resilient soul yoga. the owner there, Susan, she's like, nope, there's enough power places in town. She is gone. She is restorative, relaxation. Let me tell you, when you walk into her studio, it's like walking into a sanctuary. I seriously,
Mm.
when I walked in for the first time, I walked in like this. I stopped, and then I was like mouth open looking around. That was that was the reaction. And everybody, Susan's like, yeah, people do that all the time.
Yeah.
Um, because that's the vibe that she has, right? So to your point, is like know your market, know what your brand is. And if you are, going into that hardcore, going for those type A people, going for that, then yeah, maybe you lean back into, I would love to see a studio lean back into that. I mean, I
Carol,
love,
would you put pick a spot in?
Well, I think you made some good points because my initial reaction is nah. But I'm thinking in terms of like if I had the current look, my what I had before.
Yeah.
So and mainly because I don't want to have to deal with people bitching about like not getting their spot.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? I don't want to have that ad like you come, pre-register, but get there when you get there and find
Just show
whatever
up.
is
Yeah.
available. Yeah. So
well, I guess it kind of goes to a lot. One thing I think that is helpful, and we talk about it, is marking on the floor. That if you don't want to do pick a spot, at least if you have a mark on the floor so that the
Laying out your room makes sense.
laying out the room, because then you don't have the people like not wanting to move over, or you're moving mats around and all of that stuff. So I think if you're like, I really not don't want to do pick a spot. However, I do think that is one thing that we would recommend, because then with new clients, it's like, oh, hey, Carol, when you go into the yoga room, you're going to see some dots on the floor. Just put the top left corner of your yoga mat on the dot, or in the middle, whatever that studio's decided. So it makes it super easy, because I don't know about you. I can't tell you how many times I would be rearranging the room because people
Yeah.
were like, I physically would move mats out of the way, and, move people around and stuff like that. So I do think having,
Okay. I,
uh-oh,
I think laying
uh-oh,
out the room.
gloves are off. Uh-oh, gloves are off. He's like,
What
okay.
about what I was just thinking, like, what's what's a studio where this would be actually a really big advantage? And I'm thinking about a studio in LA that we went to. I think Terry, you were there even.
Yeah.
And it was a really bad parking lot and a bad corner to get into it. So people were late because they would literally be there but couldn't get in. And so they had this issue of like, how do we make sure that we're like not having people entering the class really late, but then at the same time they reserved whatever. I was thinking about though that studio, and then I was thinking about an airplane. Like you can pick your seat on the airplane, or if you don't pick it, you're assigned a seat. And then if you're not at the gate and the airplane takes off, like too bad, but you've already paid for the seat. And people accept that as a reality. Like, well, I didn't take the flight, so I'm not going to pay for it. That's not a thing. If you have pick a spot in the right market, you kind of lean that direction where it's like, that's your spot. You have paid for that spot. And whether you show up or not, there will be an empty spot there because that's Carol only. Therefore, you pay for it.
Well, I use that exact thing when I started implementing no-shows and late cancels.
Yeah.
That's exactly the thing I said. I said, look, because we didn't lock our door when class started, we let people come in a little bit late. It was like, hey, look, that spot is yours. And if you don't show up, we're going to charge you for it, because then somebody else could have taken that class. And we're like, we want it. So that's exactly what I said about the late cancel and no-shows. And,
Yeah.
so that's a whole nother conversation about that. But yeah, it's interesting.
It could be an interesting leverage point, I guess, would be because it just like recontextualizes what the room is and how valuable that spot is, especially if you're a busy studio and
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I'm actually thinking too of those studios that are bigger rooms, particularly when you've got 40 people coming in and 40 people coming out, and you've got all these things you have to do. But you've got to get the room ready, you got to turn the room and all this stuff. If you have I just think in terms of operational and logistics. It just makes the traffic flow. And then that way
Mm.
people aren't crowding the door, trying, like trying to get their in before the room is maybe ready because they want to get their spot. And I think that I've seen like practically Filene's basement, like, fights erupt. People like body checking to get into the door. Seriously,
Yeah.
and I think that is where a pick a spot situation be like, you got your spot, just let us do the room, and then people can file in and they don't have to be all frantic and all that kind of stuff. So there's another, depending on the market.
What about charging for pick a spot?
Mm.
What if it's
Like,
like
like you
the
said, the
airplane, right?
airplane, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like extra,
It's 15 bucks for a class. It's $18 if you want to pick your spot first.
yeah.
Or you peg it that way because then it's like if you're on our premium membership, you get pick a spot. I don't know there's any systems that can even do that. I'm not sure how I actually feel about it, but
I don't know,
that
but
could be that could be interesting.
that could be very interesting.
If you were a smaller space in a bigger market, where it's like there are a few studios out there where it's a 12-person studio, but they're in a million-person market. Every fucking class is sold out. There's like the only time you don't have a full class is because someone doesn't show up.
Yeah.
In that case, it might make sense to do something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's, they've been doing it forever, like in spin studios and stuff like that, have forever, years had
Mm-hmm.
that availability to pick a spot. So it's kind of just
That well, Mariana Tech comes off of what was it called, Flywheel or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it was built for that purpose because they needed a platform that did that stuff better, and Pick a Spot was one of the core features. With the bikes, it's more obvious because you're limited.
Right.
You have a limited amount of space and stuff. But it's actually the same with the studio. Like you,
We
let's
coach.
say you have 10 bikes that fit into a room kind of perfectly. But if you actually owned an 11th bike, you could cram it in there somewhere and put someone on it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's only in a yoga studio where you're like, oh, well, our capacity is in this range of 5 because we can move mats around and stuff. That's an old school thing that I think needs to be done. I think you need to have a set capacity for your class type and style with a specific layout, with a space per person. And like, that's it. There is no squeeze someone else in thing. And if you lean into that sort of control of supply, then things like pick a spot, even charging for it, whatever, like that starts to become powerful as
Yeah.
a larger whole system for how you operate.
Interesting.
Now I'm like, I want to run a studio and do pick a spot and test it. Like, what can I play with here?
Maybe if anybody who's listening, if you have either Mindbody or Walla or Mariana Attack, maybe you could, do it and report to us how it goes. Obviously you need to have a plan for it and let the teachers know, let the students know, and roll it out, all that kind of stuff. Maybe explainer video on your website. Hey, we're rolling out this new feature. But like Carol said, clients who have it really like it.
Everyone, I don't, that's not true. I know one client that launched it and then went back. And not even because something bad happened. They're just like, we just don't care. It was like too much administrative effort for their team to manage it. They just were like, we don't see the advantage of doing it, basically. But other than that one, and literally one, other than that one client, everyone I know who has it likes it. So.
Interesting.
Spot.
Is it non-attachment? Is it go contrary to yoga? I don't know.
Here's your generic butthead answer to that. If yoga is everything, then how is anything not yoga?
And then so pick a spot as yoga.
Pick a spot's just as yoga is not pick a spot. Like there's no. It's your core values. Again, like what's your brand? What's your core values? What's your approach as a studio? Sure. But to say anything is or isn't yoga, because let's go down that rabbit hole, dude. Man, anyone who's read any real yoga shit, like if you read Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there's some weird shit in there, like really weird stuff. If you go back the non-Vedic lines, you go back the tantric line, like have you ever seen it where you shove the cloth up your nose and pull it out your mouth to clean your sinus as a
Or you
daily cleaning
swallow it,
practice?
you swallow it,
You swallow it and then pull it out this way.
or you swallow it and you poop it out and
Right.
go that way. Seriously.
Yep. That one's a less common one. It's not a daily practice, but yep.
Yeah. It's like to
Like,
clean your whole digestive system.
right.
So, yeah.
What is or isn't?
Carol,
It's like, what? Stop it.
talk to the hat. Talk to the hat.
What's the quote, right? It's yoga is a journey to the self, by the self, through the self, something like that. I'm butchering it. But like that quote actually is kind of brilliant in that the whole purpose is awareness of yourself. So
Well, okay. So you just said that. Okay. So this total
it's
tangent.
not about any of the rules, if I can pick a spot or not.
So, okay, here's total tangent. When you said that about yourself, through yourself, whatever self, another sort of, what am I trying to say? In that Jesus Christ visited India because it's through him, with him, in him, through the unity of the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga!
Hey, controversially, I've heard it, you've heard it, Carol's heard it, and I've heard it from more than one place. They're
Yeah,
like,
so what
yeah,
happened to Jesus Christ between?
Jesus was he was a yogi. What are we
Yeah,
talking about? Like
it's
that's
like
how they talk
13,
about it. They're
yeah, so
like,
it's like, where did he go between 13 and like basically his early 30s? There's nothing written about when he's in his 20s in the Bible.
well, my friend who is a pastor actually is like, that's not true. There is record of him going on a journey. But
Going on a journey.
he did go to India. Yeah.
So there we
I
have it.
if you go to the SRF, the Self-Realization Fellowship, right? You've got the heads of the deities all on the same level. Jesus is right in there. Simple as that. They're like, yeah, he's a yogi.
He
The
really
worst ever is like, can you turn water, like literally turn water into wine or walk on water? And they're like, yeah, I know 3 people that can do that right now. Just like, yogis say the weirdest shit.
it is definitely okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's really interesting.
We're like, I don't know where we go from here.
Well, I had one more thing, but I think that this is just sort of like a good we can save it for next time. So next week, team, because the Thursday is Thanksgiving in the United States, the Roundup will come to you live on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. And also with the holidays. Oh yeah, so Boxing Day, the 26th, we will still have it. Josh will be on it. It's, I don't, I may be, but we'll still have it on the 26th. But next week, it will be the day before Thanksgiving. Same time, same channel.
Same yoga time, same yoga channel.
Yeah. So pick a spot. Yes, no, thoughts. Is it yogic, not yogic? Would you do it if you could?
Start a fight in the comments. Let's see.
Start a fight. Let's. And if you haven't and you're willing to give it a try, we'd love to see what the results are. Yeah.
I'd run pick a spot in one class and not in another class.
Ooh, do an A/B test.
Don't
Well,
do that. I'm
here's the
joking.
thought.
Please, if you're watching this video, do not run pick a spot in some of your classes and not in others. I
I
feel
don't
like
even know. I don't even know if you could do that. I don't
I don't
know.
even know if you can do it, but
Yeah.
that's your, I guarantee that will cause some sort of issue
Yeah. Yeah.
somewhere.
And
Yeah.
what would also be interesting, maybe just on the pick a spot, is those of you like that are doing, traditional yoga classes and then something like a yoga sculpt or maybe more like an IHP, Inferno Hot Pilates or something like that, are just one type of class get more pick a spots than the other type of class. That would be interesting. I don't know. That's just where my brain goes. But no, we're not adding it to KPIs, just so I can see that as a KPI. How many pick a spots were scheduled? So Anyway.
Oh yeah, if you do pick a spot, you should absolutely track that.
Yeah. Don't, yeah.
Terry's like, oh, please
Shit.
don't add this to my KPIs. Well, that's how you know. If you were to launch pick a spot, you would have to know. Do people even care? How do you know if they care? Like, are they using it?
You know, I mean, interesting. I should look at Mind Body Report to see, do they have like a report for Pickus? Because they've had it for a while now, but I don't think I've seen any report that shows the usage of Pick a Spot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well, have a good weekend.
And I want, you know, this room that Josh is in, that you see this beautiful thing behind him and everything. I want to tell you that he basically locked his leadership team in there last week, did not feed us, kept the AC so cold. I was wearing socks in Mexico. No, just kidding.
Hey, I've got my Mexico slippers.
Oh, I love these. Aren't those cool?
The Birkenstocks with the woolly in the middle. Because you can't have a full slipper. The top of your foot gets hot.
Yeah. Anyway.
Keeps.
Oh, I will just say one more thing, just total aside. So the last Friday, after we wrapped up some stuff, Josh, Mayer, and I just spent the whole day doing content, which was super duper fun. And I was talking to a client earlier this week and just said, hey, maybe you pick 1 or 2 hours every so often and you just go with a couple people on your team and all you do is create content.
Yeah.
We really had a good time doing it. Next year, next year, Carol, be prepared. We've already talked about it. Oh, look at that. Could you do one eyebrow at a time? I never could do that. Oh.
I can only do one side. Can you do both
Is-
sides, Carol?
She could, look at that. She could do full on Spock.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Carol's so mysterious.
Even with
You know?
the Botox, it works. So yeah.
Okay, so just to give you a heads up, Carol, because I know you don't like last minute surprises, so I'm giving you almost a full year's notice that next year
Content creation day.
Yeah, we're going to have a content creation day. Well, we did a little bit. Oh my gosh, some of the pictures are so cute. But we're going to do a whole content creation day next year before everybody gets there.
All right, put on the list. Next roundup, we talk about batching content, which I think
I
is
will.
something that absolutely we need to.
Batching.
Studios should be doing this on the regular. It's not that hard if you get a good flow going with it.
Yeah, roundup top. Oh yeah, I'm making a note right now. And if there's topics you'd like us to cover in the roundup, post them. Let us know. I just pulled the pick a spot because there was a post in the YC. Oftentimes that's what we do, is we'll just pull a post from the YC and start talking about it. So if there's something you specifically would like just us to rant about for an hour plus, post it. Say, hey, what about this or what about that? So yeah, and yeah.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye. Go do some yoga. Thanks, Carol. And you'll send me the recording. Yes, we went long with
Yes,
that.
got it.
Okay.
Great.
All right, team. So good to see everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Go do some yoga and pick a spot. We'll see.